In the quiet prelude of history, before kings carved their names into stone and before empires rose with the clang of conquest, there flowed a river that would cradle one of humanity's earliest great cities. The Indus, winding, powerful and patient, traced its course through fertile plains, carrying with it the promise of life and the whisper of civilizations yet to come. Its waters, dark and reflective beneath the sun, were not merely rivers but arteries of human aspiration, nourishing soil, thought, and ambition. Along its banks, mud and clay would be pressed into bricks. Streets would be aligned in unerring grids, as if the very city itself were a dream made tangible. It is here, in the plains that stretch from modern-day Pakistan into western India, that the first shadows of urbanity appeared. Archaeologists, brushing away centuries of silt and sand, have revealed settlements of astonishing order. Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, and countless smaller towns whose names are now lost, whose memory survives only in the symmetry of walls and the geometry of streets. These were not accidental arrangements. They were deliberate, precise, and deliberate in a manner that speaks of minds attuned to order, control, and harmony. Streets ran straight for miles, intersections aligned with care, houses built with standardized bricks, drains flowing clean and constant. It was a civilization that understood its environment, bending it to human use without erasing its natural rhythms. Yet, for all this precision, the cities are silent. No written histories accompany the clay and stone. No inscriptions tell us the stories of the people who walked these streets. Instead, we are left to interpret the traces. A granary here, a bath there, a seal etched with cryptic symbols. The Indus script, still undeciphered, hints at a language, a thought, a culture now irretrievably lost. In these artifacts we see a society that valued order, hygiene, and perhaps ritual, that worshipped, traded, and created, yet whose voice has faded into the same waters that once carried their lifeblood. The river itself becomes a metaphor, a mirror of memory. It nourished, it transported, it witnessed. Floods may have altered its course, sediment may have buried its banks, but its passage through history remains. Like the civilization it cradled, it flows quietly, unceasing, indifferent to the human drama on its shores. And yet, it is precisely within this indifference that the human story asserts itself. For the people of the Indus were aware of the river's power, its generosity and its peril, and they built their cities not against it, but in careful dialogue with it. Their baths, reservoirs, and drainage systems reveal a sophisticated understanding of water, of risk, of life itself. Civilization, in this context, was not merely survival. It was a conscious shaping of environment, a dialogue between human desire and natural law. And yet, despite this intelligence, despite this careful orchestration, the cities eventually fell silent. The river, once the pulse of urban life, continued to flow while the streets emptied. The granaries fell unused. The baths grew stagnant. Scholars debate the causes: ecological upheaval, climatic shifts, tectonic movements, or societal collapse. Perhaps it was a combination of all. But the reason matters less than the echo left behind. The Indus vanished not with a roar but with a sigh, leaving behind a pattern in clay and mud that suggests both brilliance and fragility. In the absence of written record, every brick, every alignment, every well becomes a voice, faint, spectral, but insistently present. To walk along these ruins is to confront a paradox: precision and mystery, permanence and transience, human ingenuity and inevitable decay. One imagines the footsteps of a child along the paved street, the rhythm of merchants moving goods to the river, the quiet ceremony of worship at a small shrine. And yet all these lives dissolve into absence, leaving only the architecture as a testament. The city becomes a mirror of memory itself, a reflection of human desire to endure, and the equally human inevitability of being forgotten. There is a haunting beauty here, a reminder that civilization is both fragile and luminous, like a firefly against the dark canopy of time. The Indus's genius lay in its foresight, the creation of spaces that balanced the needs of community, the demands of commerce, and the subtleties of daily life. Baths were not merely functional. They were symbols of ritual, health, and perhaps spiritual clarity. Granaries were not merely storage. They were anchors of survival, measures of societal foresight. Streets were not mere paths. They were expressions of order, symmetry, and control. Each feature of the city reveals a mind attuned to both practicality and beauty, a civilization that understood that permanence was built not in conquest, but in the careful tending of life's necessities. And yet, for all this brilliance, permanence was an illusion. Human memory, fragile and selective, allowed the river to outlast the cities it nurtured, letting silence and mystery take root where laughter and labor once existed. As the centuries passed, the Indus and its cities faded from common memory, subsumed by new empires, new rivers, new roads. Yet the ruins endure, speaking to those willing to listen. They tell of a people who faced the same uncertainties we do. The caprice of nature, the fragility of human endeavor, the unrelenting passage of time. They reveal a civilization that did not vanish in ignominy, but in quiet withdrawal, a society that accomplished greatness and yet chose, or was forced, to disappear beneath the dust of history. In their absence, the Indus offers lessons still, on planning, foresight, adaptation, and the delicate balance between human ambition and the forces that surround it. And so, the river continues to flow. Beneath the sun and moon, past the ruins of streets once walked, past the echo of marketplaces and homes, it carries the memory of a civilization that aspired to order, to beauty, and to endurance. The Indus leaves behind no triumphant monuments, no inscribed victories, only the quiet testimony of its cities and the invisible pulse of human effort. The river, and the cities it cradled, remind us that history is both presence and absence, that greatness can reside in silence, and that sometimes the most profound stories are those left unfinished. In the end, to walk among the ruins of the Indus is to walk among whispers of humanity itself. Here, in the measured geometry of streets, the disciplined arrangement of bricks, and the patient flow of the river, one senses the delicate balance of ambition and humility. Civilization, once luminous, is now spectral, yet in its silence, it teaches more than any written record could. That to build is to hope, to organize is to dream, and to vanish is not to be forgotten, but to leave a voice for those who seek it in the quiet currents of time. Amid the wind-swept plains where the Indus once carved its patient path, the city rises again, not in sound nor in life but in stone. Bricks, weathered by centuries of sun and monsoon, align in grids so precise they hint at an intelligence far older than our ability to name it. Streets stretch straight and unwavering, flanked by houses of standardized design, their thresholds and courtyards speaking of a society that understood not only construction, but the very rhythm of daily existence. Each stone, each brick, is a syllable in a story the earth refuses to forget, a language without sound, etched in geometry and mud. These cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro foremost among them, were extraordinary in their order. Unlike the haphazard settlements of the ancient world, the Indus cities were meticulously planned. Streets intersected with unerring regularity. Drains ran beneath them like veins carrying the lifeblood of the city. Wells punctuated courtyards as both practical necessities and symbols of communal life. It is tempting to read such precision as mere pragmatism, but it speaks to something deeper. A civilization conscious of harmony, of control, and of beauty in everyday existence. There is a poetry in the very alignment of bricks, a rhythm in the layout of neighborhoods, as if the city itself breathed in organized pulses. And yet, for all its planning, the city is silent. It offers no narratives, no chants, no echoes of the voices that once animated its streets. The absence of written records leaves us with only fragments. A fragment of a seal, a shard of pottery, a stairway descending into shadowed wells. Archaeologists have reconstructed the forms, but the hearts of these cities remain inaccessible. The silence is almost reverent, a reminder that even in civilizations of meticulous design, human presence is fleeting. In this quiet, one senses not failure, but the inevitability of impermanence. A society may order its environment with genius, but the sweep of centuries cannot be contained. There is something profoundly human in the Indus approach to construction. The use of standardized bricks, the symmetry of homes, the careful layout of streets. It speaks of foresight, cooperation, and perhaps a shared vision of civic identity. These were not scattered villagers, but a community bound by common purpose, aware of the delicate interdependence of space, water, and life. It is in these silent stones that the psychological imprint of the people endures, a desire for order in the face of nature, a striving for permanence despite mortality. The city becomes a reflection of its creators' minds, a physical manifestation of thought, discipline, and imagination. And yet, the stones are not merely functional. They are eloquent. Their placement suggests ritual and intention, subtle signals about hierarchy, movement, and the flow of human activity. Streets that widen at certain junctures hint at marketplaces, gathering spaces where commerce and conversation would have mingled. Wells raised above the streets indicate a sophisticated understanding of water management, while drains reveal concern not merely for cleanliness but for health and well-being. In every detail, there is an awareness of both the body and the community, of survival and of elegance. As centuries passed, the stones have endured where the living did not. Floods, climate shifts, and eventual abandonment transformed these vibrant centers into relics, but the cities continue to speak, silently, insistently. Modern archaeologists walk among them, brushing away the dust, tracing walls with fingers, imagining the lives they once contained. Each line of brick is a syllable, each alignment a sentence, together forming an essay on civilization, human ambition, and the fragility of memory. And though the voice of the people is lost, the stone itself insists that they existed, that they thought, that they dreamed. This silence teaches as much as any surviving text. It reveals a paradox, that the grandeur of human creation is inseparable from its vulnerability. No matter the precision, no matter the genius, time and nature have their own claim. Yet within this vulnerability lies profound beauty. To walk these streets today is to witness the triumph of thought over chaos, of vision over circumstance, even as the city sleeps beneath centuries of dust. In these stones, one can sense the rhythm of lives organized and deliberate, and the echo of humanity enduring despite all erasure. The stones speak, but they do not lament. They do not shout, nor mourn, nor boast. They exist as testament, as memory etched into the earth. They remind us that civilization is not only what we build, but the thought, care, and intention we pour into those structures. The Indus cities remind us that life is fragile, that perfection is fleeting, but that the human spirit can imprint itself on the world in ways that endure, even when its creators vanish. And so, one lingers among the silent streets, tracing the straight lines of walls, peering into the shadows of long-abandoned wells, feeling the pulse of an intelligence that survives only in form. The city teaches that even without sound, without narrative, without life, there is meaning. The bricks, the drains, the houses, they are voices from the past, whispering that order, beauty, and care matter, that the human mind can leave traces even when time has claimed everything else. In their quiet, we hear the hum of forgotten ambition, the echo of lives measured in alignment and symmetry, and the enduring testament of a civilization that sought to make permanence from impermanence itself. Amid the meticulous streets and geometric grids of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, there exists a mystery more profound than the stones themselves. The vanished language of the industry etched upon tiny seals of steatite, clay tablets, and ceremonial objects, these symbols are at once familiar and alien, an alphabet of the unknown, a cipher written in shapes that resist translation. Each seal hints at commerce, ritual, or social order, yet the mind strains in vain to give them voice. Scholars have tried for decades, attempting to impose patterns, to trace linguistic roots to Dravidian or Indo-European origins, yet the script remains obstinately silent. It is a voice of the past that refuses to speak in terms we understand, a whisper from a vanished consciousness. To look upon these seals is to feel the weight of absence. One imagines the hand that carved the symbol, precise, deliberate, aware of the importance of each stroke. Perhaps it marked ownership, a prayer, a record of trade, or an invocation of the divine. In every curve, every angular line, there is intelligence, a mind reaching across the centuries to communicate. But the silence is absolute. Unlike cuneiform or hieroglyphs, the Indus script has yielded no Rosetta Stone. The civilizations that followed, the cultures that remembered others' achievements, knew nothing of these cities' language. And so, a people who built streets and drained rivers with uncanny foresight remain inaccessible to us in their most intimate thoughts. This unreadable language reflects a civilization both advanced and mysterious. Its existence suggests literacy, administration, and social cohesion. It implies record-keeping, the management of commerce, and perhaps even the codification of law or ritual. Yet the failure of comprehension transforms knowledge into myth. In the absence of translation, imagination fills the void. Each seal becomes a mirror of possibility, a prayer that remains unheard, an account of trade that never reaches our eyes, a declaration of identity frozen in form. The human dimension of this silence is haunting. These people were thinkers, traders, and artisans, capable of monumental planning and precise construction. They measured water, bricks, and streets with astonishing accuracy, yet their thoughts vanish as if scattered by the monsoon winds. To know that a civilization could excel so completely in practical domains, yet leave no trace of the language that gave it voice, is to confront the fragility of human expression. In the Indus, brilliance exists indeed, but speech has been erased. Still the symbols endure. Archaeologists trace their lines, run fingers over impressions left millennia ago, attempting to recover the rhythm and intention of these early scribes. Each seal is a puzzle, a memory, a testament to a mind that once organized, counted, or revered. In their silence, they teach a lesson about the impermanence of knowledge and the tenacity of meaning. Even when words vanish, intent survives in artifact. The shapes themselves are poetry, evidence that humanity sought to leave a mark, even if the universe would obscure it. And so, the Indus script remains a shadow on the wall of history. It reminds us that the written word, however vital, is not the only vessel of civilization. A culture may communicate through order, architecture, and ritual, and yet its absence from our comprehension does not diminish its significance. The symbols whisper of commerce, faith, and daily life that our understanding cannot reach, but that our imagination can almost touch. In the end, the unreadable lines of the Indus script are more than a mystery. They are a reflection of the human desire to persist beyond the limits of mortality. They are evidence that communication, in its many forms, is a fundamental instinct, and that even when words fail, civilization can leave its echo in the world. The symbols, small and unassuming, carry the weight of countless lives, countless intentions, a silent testament to the indomitable human will to be remembered. The Indus cities were not isolated pockets of human ingenuity. They were nodes in an expansive network of trade that stretched across deserts and oceans. Along the winding river and the rugged coasts, merchants traversed sand and salt water, exchanging beads, pottery, metals, and ideas. The very geography demanded courage and skill. Monsoon winds could be treacherous, rivers unpredictable, and desert sands unyielding. Yet the Indus people moved, connected, and thrived in a world that required both intellect and daring. Archaeological evidence reveals a remarkable cosmopolitanism. Harappan seals appear in Mesopotamia, while shells from distant seas adorn Indus jewelry. Copper, ivory, and semi-precious stones trace circuits of commerce spanning hundreds of miles. This was not mere barter. It was the orchestration of economy, diplomacy, and human ambition, a civilization capable of projecting influence far beyond the banks of its river. Trade was not only practical, it was cultural, a vessel of ideas, technologies, and belief systems that intertwined with material goods. And yet, the human stories behind this trade are lost. We do not know the faces of the merchants, the names of their families, or the anxieties that accompanied every journey. We can only imagine the fear of storms, the joy of safe arrival, the quiet hope that their labor would sustain life and legacy. Trade was lifeblood, binding city to city, community to community, shaping economies and societies in ways invisible but vital. The Indus was a civilization of connectivity, of calculated risk, and of the subtle art of human interdependence. Even in ruins we sense the rhythm of commerce, the hum of markets, the clatter of carts, the careful weighing of metals, the ritualized sealing of goods. The river carried not only products, but aspirations, human ambition distilled into clay, bronze, and stone. And when these merchants vanished, they left behind artifacts that tell stories in shadows. Seals with animal motifs, beads strung with purpose, jars marked for export. Every object is a fragment of narrative, a glimpse into lives of ingenuity, resourcefulness, and daring. The human lesson endures. The Indus merchants remind us that civilization thrives not only on creation, but on connection, exchange, and shared effort. Even as streets erode and rivers shift course, the spirit of trade persists, a testament to foresight and courage. In the absence of record, commerce becomes myth, and myth becomes memory, allowing us to reconstruct not just economies, but human lives in the margins of what survives. And so, the Indus merchants continue to journey across time. Their objects, their innovations, their courage ripple through centuries, reminding us that civilizations are measured not only in stone and script, but in the networks of trust, labor, and ingenuity that bind humanity together. In the shadowed corners of streets now empty, among the echoes of bustling markets and the faint imprint of daily life, lie small figures carved in clay and cast in bronze. They are fragile, no taller than a child's hand, yet their presence is monumental. Women with accentuated forms, bulls standing with solemn strength, and enigmatic creatures whose purpose escapes modern understanding. Each is a voice reaching across millennia, a silent testament to the spiritual consciousness of the Indus people. These figures were never mere decoration. They were intermediaries between the mundane and the divine, tools of ritual and devotion, vessels through which human hope and fear found form. The figurines suggest a society deeply attuned to the cycles of life and death, fertility and decay. Some depict mothers nurturing children, hinting at the centrality of domestic and generational continuity. Others, animals both real and mythic, may represent strength, protection, or the forces of nature themselves. Bronze and clay, the materials most enduring against time, were selected carefully, not just for durability, but for resonance. Clay could be molded, touched, and shaped. Bronze required knowledge, skill, and collaboration. In these objects, we see both practical intelligence and symbolic imagination, intertwined in the act of creation. Yet the meaning of many remains tantalizingly beyond reach. The absence of accompanying texts, prayers, or oral tradition leaves these figures suspended in mystery. Were they talismans, ritual tools, or objects of personal devotion? Perhaps each figure carried multiple roles, shifting according to context, time of year, or need. In the quietude of the ruined city, one can imagine citizens arranging these artifacts within homes, on shrines, or near wells, offering daily gestures to forces they both revered and feared. Their care reflects a civilization attuned not only to the physical necessities of life, but also to its spiritual dimensions. The artistry itself speaks volumes. Simple forms convey nuance. The tilt of a head, the angle of a limb, the flow of lines on a torso. They embody an understanding of human perception, an instinct for creating forms that communicate beyond words. Even in their abstraction there is clarity of intent, of devotion, of meaning. These are artifacts of psychological insight as much as ritual practice. They remind us that spirituality in the Indus was not abstract theology but lived experience, a daily negotiation between human ambition, survival, and the invisible forces that shaped existence. Archaeological finds also suggest that these figures were used in social rituals, perhaps offerings, perhaps tokens exchanged in trade or marriage, or markers of status and power. Small clay seals depict similar motifs, hinting at repeated symbolic language that may have woven together faith, commerce, and civic life. Religion, art, and society were inseparable. Every image carried layers of significance understood intimately by those who made and used it. In the hands of the Indus people, clay and bronze were more than material. They were vessels of thought, devotion, and memory. And yet, these gods of clay and bronze are silent. Their creators vanished, leaving behind the objects themselves, which endure as whispers. They do not speak. They invite observation, contemplation, and imagination. In their silence lies a profound human lesson, That belief and creativity can persist even when the practitioners are gone, that the sacred does not require words to survive. Walking among the ruins today, one can almost reconstruct the rhythm of life. The morning light falling on a small shrine, a hand carefully placing a figurine by the hearth, a family gathering around the symbolic representation of fertility, health, or protection. The air might have smelled of incense or dust, of clay and water. These moments, long vanished, are immortalized in miniature forms, reminding us that civilization is not measured only by walls or streets, but by the subtler, intimate acts of meaning-making that define human existence. In the larger scope of the Indus Civilization, these figures offer a window into psychological sophistication. They reveal a people who sought control not only over their environment but also over uncertainty, over fate, over the forces they could not command. Religion, ritual, and art became tools for understanding existence, tools for endurance, and tools for continuity. And in the artifact's endurance, we find a voice that transcends time, communicating devotion, care, and awareness to a world that has otherwise forgotten them. Thus, even in silence, these gods speak. They speak of a civilization that understood the balance between utility and beauty, the tangible and the spiritual, the known and the unknowable. They speak of lives lived with attention, reverence, and an acute consciousness of impermanence. And in their quiet resilience, they remind us that meaning can endure beyond human memory, that faith can survive where empires crumble, and that art, even in the smallest forms, carries the eternal heartbeat of civilization. In the heart of the Indus settlements, water was life. Not merely a resource, but the measure of civilization itself. Wells, reservoirs, and baths were meticulously designed, reflecting a society that understood the rhythms of human need and the unpredictability of nature. Stone steps descended into clear water, reservoirs captured seasonal floods, and drainage systems carried waste safely away from homes. Every element was planned with an intelligence that suggests foresight, discipline, and reverence for both utility and harmony. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro remains the most evocative testament to this mastery. Its waterproofed brick floors and carefully engineered walls created a space for ritual, cleansing, and perhaps even contemplation. One can almost hear the quiet splashing of water, smell the damp brick and earth, feel the coolness against skin as citizens moved through its shallow depths. This was not a bath alone, but a statement of social order, a communal heart beating at the center of the city, a space where the individual and society intersected in both practicality and ritual. Yet wells and drains tell more than engineering prowess. They reveal the psychological landscape of the civilization. They speak of a people who understood dependency on rivers, rainfall, and the labor of neighbors. Water was control and vulnerability intertwined. It was necessary for survival, yet easily disrupted. Its management was a civic responsibility, a demonstration of collective intelligence and foresight. The city's planners understood that careful tending of water could sustain life and ensure continuity across generations. Even now, the silent wells speak. Walking among the abandoned streets, one senses the invisible pulse of water that once nourished entire communities. Each reservoir and stepwell is a monument to ingenuity and care, to a people who shaped the environment without subduing it. Their knowledge endures, hidden in stone and sediment, whispering lessons of resourcefulness and balance to anyone who listens. The Indus Civilization teaches that survival is not merely the preservation of life, but the cultivation of order, foresight, and harmony with nature. Water, like memory, requires stewardship. And in these silent, sunken spaces, we perceive the ingenuity and patience of a people who understood that true permanence comes not from monuments or conquest, but from the measured care of what sustains life. Rising above the streets, massive brick granaries stand as silent guardians of sustenance. Their raised platforms, ventilated interiors, and precise construction reveal a civilization that understood the fragility of abundance and the precariousness of survival. These were not storage spaces alone. They were the embodiment of foresight, a civic consciousness that anticipated scarcity and sought to mitigate it. Grain stored here was a promise of continuity, resilience, and the careful orchestration of society. Walking among the empty granaries, One can almost imagine the labor that filled them. Workers carried heavy sacks, measuring and arranging the harvest with methodical precision. Children might have run between columns, laughter mingling with the rhythm of work. Merchants and administrators ensured that supplies were accounted for, that every kernel would sustain lives beyond the immediate household. In these moments, the granaries were not only practical, but profoundly human, spaces where order, care, and survival intertwined. Archaeological study of these structures reveals both ingenuity and foresight. Raised platforms protected grain from flooding, ventilated interiors preserved it from spoilage. The architecture itself is a lesson in understanding environment, climate, and human need. But beyond bricks and mortar, the granaries reflect a civilization aware of vulnerability, of the delicate balance between plenty and want, abundance and crisis. They are psychological as well as practical structures, evidence of a society that planned for the unforeseen, understood interdependence, and valued foresight. Yet now the granaries are silent. No sacks of grain remain, no footsteps echo across the platforms, no human presence animates these walls. In their emptiness, they become more than ruins. They are memorials to discipline, labor, and human ingenuity. They speak of a civilization that achieved greatness through careful attention to necessity, a lesson in foresight and resilience that resonates across the centuries. Even in absence, the granaries teach. They remind us that civilization thrives not only on creativity and vision, but on the quiet, persistent work that sustains life. Survival depends on order, cooperation, and care. The Indus left behind walls of brick, empty yet eloquent, whispering to us that human effort, when applied with intelligence and foresight, can endure long after the people themselves are gone. Amid monumental streets, grand baths, and organized granaries, life in the Indus Civilization also unfolded in the quiet, intimate spaces of ordinary existence. Pottery, cooking tools, spindle whorls, and small domestic artifacts reveal the rhythm of daily life, the invisible heartbeat that sustained cities, families, and communities. Life was measured not only by trade or infrastructure but by the care and attention invested in the mundane. The preparation of meals, the spinning of thread, the tending of fires. The houses themselves, standardized yet uniquely inhabited, offer glimpses into private lives. Courtyards were spaces of social negotiation, hearths centers of warmth and ritual, and small shrines spoke to the spiritual dimension of domesticity. We can almost smell bread baking, hear the gentle lapping of water from nearby wells, and see children learning the patterns of work and play. The ordinary in this civilization was extraordinary, revealing attention to structure, rhythm, and harmony in daily life. Artifacts show not only utility but creativity. Pottery designs are intricate, tools are refined for function, beads and jewelry hint at aesthetic sensibility and social identity. Beauty and practicality intertwined, suggesting that every act, every object carried meaning. Life was a carefully woven fabric, where work, ritual, and artistry intersected seamlessly. Psychological and cultural intelligence is evident in the integration of domestic routine with spiritual awareness, in the shaping of lives within the confines of carefully measured spaces. Even in absence, these objects endure as witnesses. The small bowls, the spindle whorls, the knives and pots, all offer evidence of intention and care. In them, we perceive the pulse of civilization, human life measured in labor, ritual, and the subtle negotiation between survival and meaning. The Indus teaches that the extraordinary is often hidden in the ordinary, and that daily acts, when performed with purpose and attentiveness, become the foundation of society. Walking among the ruins, one senses not silence, but the echo of countless footsteps, conversations, and gestures, the invisible loom of life that sustained one of humanity's earliest urban civilizations. These traces of daily life offer lessons in resilience, structure, and the intimate bonds that allow human communities to thrive. Amid the meticulous planning and careful order of Indus cities, evidence of sudden destruction emerges. Layers of ash, charred beams, and burned floors tell a fire that once raged through streets and homes. The origin remains uncertain. Accidental ignition, social unrest, or environmental catastrophe, yet its effect resonates through time. Fire is both destroyer and preserver. In consuming structures, it records them, leaving traces that reveal architecture, urban planning, and material culture long after human voices vanish. One can imagine the terror of citizens confronted by flames. Families fleeing homes, merchants attempting to save goods, artisans witnessing the destruction of work that took years. The fire was an unpredictable force, a stark reminder of civilization's fragility. Even a society as meticulous as the Indus could not entirely insulate itself from disaster. In this, there is a haunting lesson. Ingenuity and order can coexist with vulnerability, and human life remains always at the mercy of forces both natural and social. Yet fire leaves gifts amid ruin. Charred remains provide insight into construction techniques, material selection, and spatial organization. The patterns of destruction illuminate human activity in ways undisturbed buildings cannot. In observing what fire spared and consumed, we glimpse both the lives of the people and the resilience of their design. The Indus knew that permanence is illusory, yet still sought to create structures that could endure, adapt, and serve the community. These silent fires speak to us across centuries. They remind us that human effort, however brilliant, exists within a delicate balance. Destruction and creation are intertwined, and memory often survives in fragments. The fire does not merely consume. It instructs. It challenges us to understand vulnerability, to appreciate foresight, and to recognize that human ingenuity is a dialogue with forces far larger than ourselves. At a certain point, the streets of the Indus fell silent. Markets emptied, homes were abandoned, workshops ceased operation. No inscriptions record the final day. No chroniclers tell of the last citizen. The reasons for this disappearance remain speculative. Environmental shifts, declining river flows, disease, social upheaval, or a combination of factors. Yet what remains is a profound absence. The ceasing of human activity, the sudden stillness of places once vibrant with labor, trade, and ritual. This vanishing is more than a historical event. It is a meditation on impermanence. Civilization, regardless of ingenuity, is not eternal. The Indus teaches that even the most advanced urban societies are contingent upon resources, cooperation, and environmental stability. When these balance points shift, life, no matter how organized, can dissipate. Yet the disappearance does not erase significance. Every street, well, and artifact continues to speak, offering fragments of memory for those willing to reconstruct the lives once lived. The absence of voices invites reflection. We are left to imagine human experience. The fear and confusion of abandonment, the sorrow of leaving homes, the hope of survival elsewhere. The vanishing shapes mythology and memory, converting lived experience into speculation, then legend. Even in silence, there is a narrative, one of human resilience, adaptation, and the fragility of structured life. In the ruins, absence becomes presence. The silence reverberates through streets and wells, through baths and granaries, reminding us that civilization is measured not only in continuity but in the echoes left when life retreats. The Indus endures in memory, and in its vanishing, it teaches that even absence can convey profound meaning. Modern archaeologists and historians have struggled to map the Indus civilization in its entirety. Cities and towns are buried beneath silt, sediment, and shifting rivers. Streets appear in some excavations and vanish in others. Granaries, wells, and baths lie scattered beneath layers of soil, as if the earth itself sought to obscure its treasures. The task of reconstruction becomes a meditation on history, archaeology, and imagination. Every trench reveals fragments of human ingenuity, yet the totality remains elusive. The hidden nature of the Indus reveals fundamental truths about human memory and time. History is not a complete record. It is patchwork, interpretation, and reconstruction. The civilization's full extent may never be known. Yet the fragments that survive, walls, seals, figurines, drainage systems, offer astonishing insight into urban planning, trade, and daily life. In these fragments, we encounter both certainty and mystery, a tension that draws us closer to understanding. The maps that hide time are also lessons in humility. Civilization, no matter how brilliant, is vulnerable to natural and human forces. Soil, river, and climate dictate what survives and what is lost. The Indus endures not in maps alone, but in imagination, scholarship, and the persistent traces of human effort. Beads, seals, pottery, and tools form the fingerprints of the Indus people. Each artifact carries traces of labor, intention, and creativity. Beads were strung with care, pottery fired with precision, and seals etched with symbols that may have recorded trade, ritual, or law. These small objects are windows into human thought, daily life, and societal organization, the tangible remnants of lives that otherwise vanish without record. Artifacts reveal a civilization deeply connected to aesthetics, utility, and meaning. They suggest rituals, domestic life, and commerce intertwined, showing that Indus people imbued their creations with both purpose and care. Even absent inscriptions, these objects speak, offering a narrative of human effort, ingenuity, and survival. Memory, in this sense, is tangible. Through these fragments, we trace the rhythms, beliefs, and accomplishments of a vanished people. Civilization, however silent, leaves testimony. The Indus teaches that even when voices vanish, their echoes persist in material culture, reminding us of the enduring nature of human intention and imagination. Though the Indus cities dissolved, their legacy remains profound. Urban planning, water management, trade networks, and community structure reveal lessons that transcend time. Streets, baths, granaries, and artifacts speak to modern observers, teaching principles of foresight, cooperation, and environmental attunement. Disappearance does not equal erasure. Absence becomes a conduit for reflection, memory, and understanding. The civilization's silence is eloquent. Its abandonment reminds us of fragility, impermanence, and human vulnerability, yet the ruins also celebrate ingenuity, intelligence, and resilience. Beneath the dust, beneath centuries of silt, the Indus civilization continues to instruct, inspire, and haunt. It reminds us that greatness need not be eternal to be meaningful, that the traces of human effort can resonate across millennia, and that even vanished societies leave enduring wisdom for those willing to listen. In the end, the Indus civilization persists not in sound, but in structure, ritual, and artifact. It whispers across time, teaching that civilization is a dialogue, between humanity and nature, between survival and aspiration, and between memory and imagination. Beneath dust and river, its legacy endures, a silent monument to human vision, effort, and resilience.